Hey there, I'm Phil Bray. If you started the year with the goal of reading through the whole Bible, I want to help you achieve that goal. Many people hit Leviticus in their Bible in a Year reading plan, and that's where they hit the eject button. Today is day 5, and today, just like every other day, until we're done, we're going to read 3 chapters. At the end, I'll give some quick comments, which might make Leviticus a bit easier to digest. And before you know it, you'll have ticked Leviticus off your Bible in a Year reading plan. And in the process, I'm hoping I might have convinced you that Leviticus is fun. I'm reading from the World English Bible Translation. Today is day 5, and we're reading Leviticus chapters 13 through 15. Leviticus chapter 13. Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "When a man shall have a swelling in his body's skin, or a scab, or a bright spot, and it becomes in the skin of his body the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priests. The priest shall examine the plague in the skin of the body. If the hair in the plague has turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the body's skin, it is the plague of leprosy. So the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his body, and its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, and its hair hasn't turned white, then the priest shall isolate the infected person for 7 days. The priest shall examine him on the 7th day. Behold, if in his eyes the plague is arrested and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. The priest shall examine him again on the 7th day. Behold, if the plague has faded and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spreads on the skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall show himself to the priest again. The priest shall examine him, and behold, if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall examine him. Behold, if there is a white swelling in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic leprosy in the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not isolate him, for he is already unclean. If the leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy covers all the skin of the infected person, from his head even to his feet, as far as it appears to the priest, then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the leprosy has covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean of the plague. It has all turned white. He is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean. The priest shall examine the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or, if the raw flesh turns again and is changed to white, then he shall come to the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the plague has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean of the plague. He is clean. When the body has a boil on its skin, and it is healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine it. Behold, if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the boil. But if the priest examines it, and behold, there are no white hairs in it, and it isn't deeper than the skin, but is dim, then the priest shall isolate him 7 days. If it spreads in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stays in its place and hasn't spread, it is the scar from the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or, when the body has a burn from fire on its skin, and the raw flesh of the burn becomes a bright spot, reddish white or white, then the priest shall examine it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and its appearance is deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It has broken out in the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest examines it, and behold, there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it isn't deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. The priest shall examine him on the 7th day. If it is spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. If the bright spot stays in its place and hasn't spread in the skin, but is faded, it is the swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar from the burn. When a man or woman has a plague on the head or on the beard, then the priest shall examine the plague, and behold, if its appearance is deeper than the skin, and the hair in it is yellow and thin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an itch. It is leprosy of the head or of the beard. If the priest examines the plague of itching, and behold, its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate the person infected with itching 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine the plague, and behold, if the itch hasn't spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the appearance of the itch isn't deeper than the skin, then he shall be shaved, but he shall not shave the itch. Then the priest shall isolate the one who has had the itch 7 more days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine the itch, and behold, if the itch hasn't spread in the skin, and its appearance isn't deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the itch spreads in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and behold, if the itch has spread in the skin, the priest shall not look for the yellow hair. He is unclean. But if in his eyes the itch is arrested and black hair has grown in it, then the itch is healed. He is clean. The priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or a woman has bright spots in the skin of the body, even white bright spots, then the priest shall examine them. Behold, if the bright spots on the skin of the body are a dull white, it is a harmless rash. It has broken out in the skin. He is clean. If a man's hair has fallen from his head, he is bald. He is clean. If his hair has fallen off from the front part of his head, he is forehead bald. He is clean. But if a reddish-white plague is in the bald head or the bald forehead, it is leprosy breaking out in his bald head or his bald forehead. Then the priest shall examine him. Behold, if the swelling of the plague is reddish-white in his bald head or in his bald forehead, like the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the body, he is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His plague is on his head. The leper in whom the plague is shall wear torn clothes, and the hair of his head shall hang loose. He shall cover his upper lip, and shall cry, Unclean, unclean. All the days in which the plague is in him, he shall be unclean. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside of the camp. The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it is in the warp or woof of linen or of wool, whether in a leather or in anything made of leather, if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the leather, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything made of leather, it is the plague of leprosy, and shall be shown to the priest. The priest shall examine the plague, and isolate the plague 7 days. He shall examine the plague on the 7th day. If the plague has spread in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in the skin, whatever use the skin is used for, the plague is a destructive mildew. It is unclean. He shall burn the garment, whether the warp or the woof, in wool or in linen, or anything of leather in which the plague is, for it is a destructive mildew. It shall be burned in the fire. If the priest examines it, and behold, the plague hasn't spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or in anything of skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing that the plague is in, and he shall isolate it 7 more days. Then the priest shall examine it after the plague is washed, and behold, if the plague hasn't changed its colour, and the plague hasn't spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire. It is a mildewed spot, whether the bareness is inside or outside. If the priest looks, and behold, the plague has faded after it is washed, then he shall tear it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it appears again in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, it is spreading. You shall burn what the plague is in with fire. The garment, either the warp or the woof, or whatever thing of skin it is, which you shall wash, if the plague has departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and it will be clean. This is the law of the plague of mildew, in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or the woof, or in anything of skin, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp. The priest shall examine him. Behold, if the plague of leprosy is healed in the leper, then the priest shall command them to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 living clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. The priest shall command them to kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood, the scarlet, and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. He shall sprinkle on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird go into the open field. He who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and bathe himself in water, and he shall be clean. After that he shall come into the camp, but shall dwell outside his tent 7 days. It shall be on the 7th day that he shall shave all his hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows. He shall shave off all his hair. He shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his body in water. Then he shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without defect, 1 ewe lamb a year old without defect, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a meal offering mixed with oil, and 1 log of oil. The priest who cleanses him shall set the man who is to be cleansed and those things before Yahweh at the door of the tent of meeting. The priest shall take 1 of the male lambs and offer for him a trespass offering with the log of oil, and wave them for a wave offering before Yahweh. He shall kill the male lamb in the place where they kill the sin offering and the burnt offering, in the place of the sanctuary. For, as the sin offering is the priest's, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. The priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before Yahweh. The priest shall put some of the rest of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, upon the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, and the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh. The priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed because of his uncleanness. Afterward, he shall kill the burnt offering. Then the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the meal offering on the altar. The priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. If he is poor and can't afford so much, then he shall take 1 male lamb for a trespass offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a meal offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford. And the one shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. On the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest. the door of the tent of meeting before Yahweh. The priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before Yahweh. The priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them for a wave offering before Yahweh. He shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before Yahweh. Then the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, and on the place of the blood of the trespass offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahweh. He shall offer one of the turtle doves, or of the young pigeons, whichever he is able to afford, of the kind he is able to afford, the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, with the meal offering. The priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before Yahweh. This is the law for him in whom is the plague of leprosy, who is not able to afford the sacrifice for his cleansing. Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, When you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for a possession, and I put a spreading mildew in a house in the land of your possession, then he who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, There seems to me to be some sort of plague in the house. The priest shall command that they empty the house, before the priest goes in to examine the plague, that all that is in the house not be made unclean. Afterward, the priest shall go in to inspect the house. He shall examine the plague, and behold, if the plague is in the walls of the house, with hollow streaks, greenish or reddish, and it appears to be deeper than the wall, then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and shut up the house 7 days. The priest shall come again on the 7th day and look. If the plague has spread in the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take out the stones in which is the plague, and cast them into an unclean place outside of the city. He shall cause the inside of the house to be scraped all over. They shall pour out the mortar that they scraped off outside of the city into an unclean place. They shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster the house. If the plague comes again and breaks out in the house after he has taken out the stones, and after he has scraped the house, and after it was plastered, then the priest shall come in and look, and behold, if the plague has spread in the house, it is a destructive mildew in the house. It is unclean. He shall break down the house, its stones and its timber, and all the house's mortar. He shall carry them out of the city into an unclean place. Moreover, he who goes into the house while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. He who lies down in the house shall wash his clothes, and he who eats in the house shall wash his clothes. If the priest shall come in and examine it, and behold, the plague hasn't spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. To cleanse the house, he shall take 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. He shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, and in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and with the running water, with the living bird, with the cedar wood, with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. But he shall let the living bird go out of the city into the open field. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the law for any plague of leprosy, and for an itch, and for the destructive mildew of a garment, and for a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and tell them, when any man has a discharge from his body, because of his discharge he is unclean. This shall be his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge, or his body has stopped from his discharge, it is his uncleanness. Every bed on which he who has the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything he sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. He who sits on anything on which the man who has the discharge sat shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. He who touches the body of him who has the discharge shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. If he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whatever saddle he who has the discharge rides on shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. He who carries those things shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whomever he who has the discharge touches, without having rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. The earthen vessel which he who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. When he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count to himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before Yahweh to the door of the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer them, the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement for him before Yahweh for his discharge. If any man has an emission of semen, then he shall bathe all his flesh in water and be unclean until the evening. Every garment and every skin which the semen is on shall be washed with water, and be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman, and there is an emission of semen, they shall both bathe themselves in water, and be unclean until the evening. If a woman has a discharge, and her discharge in her flesh is blood, she shall be in her impurity 7 days. Whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. Everything that she lies on in her impurity shall be unclean. Everything also that she sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches anything that she sits on shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. If it is on the bed, or on anything she sits on, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. If any man lies with her, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed he lies on shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of her blood many days, not in the time of her period, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her period, all the days of the discharge of her uncleanness shall be as in the days of her period. She is unclean. Every bed she lies on, all the days of her discharge, shall be to her as the bed of her period. Everything she sits on shall be unclean, as the uncleanness of her period. Whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count to herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. On the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tent of meeting. The priest shall offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her before Yahweh for the uncleanness of her discharge. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law of him who has a discharge, and of him who has an emission of semen, so that he is unclean by it. and of her who has her period, and of a man or woman who has a discharge, and of him who lies with her who is unclean. There we go. That's the end of chapter 15. And the ritual of the two birds. How was that? Tomorrow we're going to read about a ritual of two goats, but today was about two birds. And they're actually parallel rituals. We could call them scapegoat rituals, and they weren't actually unique to Israel. So Israel's neighbors, like the Hittites and the Babylonians, they had rituals that were very similar. So there's one where a sick person will take a frog and they will kiss the frog, and they're kind of transferring their illness into the frog. And then they let the live frog go outside back into the marshes where it belongs. And the idea is that the frog is taking the illness away and then back out into the marshes, into the swamps. Um, there's another one where they need to cleanse the space before they have a wedding. And so they have a goat, and they release the live goat back out into the wilderness. And the idea is that any unclean spirits that were contaminating the space get attached to the goat, and then the goat kind of transports them back out into the wilderness, away from where they're having the wedding. So we know from other ancient Near Eastern texts that it's a pretty common ritual in that area and at that time. Um, so basically what's happening in Leviticus Chapter 14, where we read about the two birds ritual, is that there is a house or a person who is recovering from leprosy or has been pronounced clean. And two birds are brought, and the one bird is killed, and its blood is collected with running water. And actually, in Hebrew, running water is literally living water, which is pretty cool. So the living water and the blood is dipped onto the live bird, or the live bird is dipped into the living water and the blood, and then that live bird is sent out and released over an open field. The idea is that it's taking with it the impurity or any uncleanness that was left in the house or on the person who was being cleansed. And then it says, and this is important because atonement isn't only made for people, atonement is made for the house. And tomorrow we'll see that atonement is made for the tabernacle as well, or the tent of meeting. One thing to notice that's important is that most times if someone was unclean, they just needed to wait till evening. You probably heard that read several times. If they're unclean, they wait till the evening, they wash with water, and then they are clean. So being unclean wasn't kind of taboo or anything. It would have just been a normal part of life. It would have been expected that, especially if you're a woman, that you would regularly be unclean. If you were married and you were having sex, you were regularly unclean. So it just would have been a part of life. And being unclean was okay. It would only be a problem if you tried to bring that uncleanness into sacred space, into the tabernacle. So in chapter 15, it says, "Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, so that they will not die in their uncleanness, if they defile my tabernacle that is among them." So the idea is, if you wanted to draw near to holy space and visit God in sacred space and come to the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, then you would have to cleanse yourself and make sure you were clean before you did that. Again, I just want to stress that being unclean isn't wrong or wasn't wrong. It wasn't sinful. It was just, I think, it's just a way of God acknowledging that there's something about the state of the world that needs to be cleansed. There's something about the state of humanity that needs to be cleansed so that we can draw near to God. Or maybe a better way to say it, and the way I like to view it, is rather than saying that you must be clean to be in God's presence, it's more helpful to say that when we are in God's presence, then we will be clean. And I think this is a little foretaste, or maybe a little shadow, of what the world will be like and what we will be like when we are living in God's presence. When we are in God's presence, we will be clean. And Leviticus and the tent of meeting and these cleanliness rituals is teaching us of what life will be like when we are in God's presence. There will be no more impurity. no more disease, and no more death. I think that's probably a good time to finish and to pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you that your desire is to dwell in the midst of humanity and to have humanity come close to you. Thank you for the hope, for the image of humanity being in your presence with no impurity, with no sickness, with no disease, and with no death. Amen. Okay, tomorrow is a special day. Tomorrow is Leviticus 16, and tomorrow we're only going to read one chapter. Not because it's long, but because it's important. It's not only central to Leviticus, it's central to the whole Torah. Tomorrow is Day of Atonement, and we're going to take the whole day just to do that one chapter. I'll see you tomorrow.